The sun blazes over the sands of Egypt. Before us rises the most powerful empire of the ancient world, ruled by Ramses II, the greatest pharaoh to ever exist, a king who commanded armies of more than 20,000 men, raised colossal temples, and considered himself a living god. His army, disciplined, numerous, and accustomed to the desert, is a fearsome force. But today, let's change just one thing. In the middle of the Nile Valley, 50 modern 21st century soldiers appear, equipped with M4 rifles, drones, thermal vision, grenades, and state-of-the-art tactical technology, but without reinforcements, without satellites, and with limited resources. The question is simple. Could these modern soldiers defeat the most powerful pharaoh of ancient Egypt? First, let's understand the setting. Egypt under Pharaoh Ramses II was not a weak kingdom, but an organized power with logistics, spies, war chariots, and total mastery of the terrain. The Egyptian army combined thousands of infantrymen, spearmen, archers, and more than 2,000 chariots pulled by fast horses. Each unit responded with precision to the orders of the pharaoh, who was not only a monarch but also a divine symbol. Facing Ramses doesn't just mean fighting against men. It means fighting against a system that believed its leader was a god impossible to defeat. The terrain also plays a key role. We are in the desert under extreme heat exceeding 45 degrees. The sand affects modern weapons, thirst and fatigue increase, and visibility can easily be lost in the dust. The Egyptians, used to the climate, can move quickly. Modern soldiers, on the other hand, depend on equipment that consumes energy and water. So, before the first shot is even fired, there is already a logistical disadvantage they must handle intelligently. Now, before thinking about shooting, there is a bigger question. What happens when an army from the future appears in front of a civilization that believes its king is literally chosen by the gods? Because here we are not just talking about military force. We are talking about religion, fear, and political control. Ramses II rules because his people are convinced that he maintains the order of the world. If that image is broken, the Egyptian army might panic, or on the contrary, it might become even more violent to defend him. That means the modern soldiers are not just fighting against spears and arrows. They are fighting against a history that has been built for centuries. Let's see what the first real clash would be like. Now, Ramses is smart. He wouldn't send his entire force at the beginning. He would send a fast advance guard of war chariots and mounted archers to test the enemy. For the modern soldiers, that first wave would be a massacre in their favor. M4 rifles have a much greater effective range than Egyptian bows. Modern bullets pierce through leather, reinforced linen, and wooden shields. And besides, drones can pinpoint targets with precision. When the shooting starts, the horses would panic from the blasts and the noise. In a few minutes, the first Egyptian unit would be torn apart, and the survivors would flee, saying that the men of fire shoot thunder that kills from a distance. So this small battle is quite easy for the soldiers. But here is where the situation goes south. In modern combat, you win and you resupply. Not here. And every magazine spent is one less magazine forever. Every drone that falls in the sand is a drone that isn't coming back. And the most dangerous part, every time the soldiers fire, they reveal their position, rate of fire, and limits. Ramses can observe, learn, and adapt. Egypt has thousands of men. He can sacrifice hundreds just to measure how many bullets they fire before they stop responding. In other words, he can use his people as a living sensor. This is a cold-blooded move, but totally possible for that era. So the modern soldiers understand something. If they keep fighting in the open field, sooner or later they are going to end up surrounded and bone dry. So they change the plan. They no longer seek to destroy entire waves. They seek to control information. How do you do that in the year 1200 BC? Not very simple. No one must see them clearly. No more big battles in broad daylight. They move at night using thermal vision, strike fast, and retreat before dawn. They kidnap messengers instead of killing them all. They break chariots with fire directed at the wheels. They burn arrow reserves. And above all, they leave a false trail. They make them believe there isn't a group of 50 men, but several different forces attacking in distant places. What they are trying to create is doubt. That doubt matters, and a lot. The Egyptian army works because orders come down clean. March here. Defend this. Pay tribute to the pharaoh. If suddenly contradictory reports arrive, some say they are winged demons, others say they are foreign warriors, others say they are sent by another god, then no unit knows exactly what it's facing. That slows down movement, and if Egypt moves slower, the modern soldiers gain hours. And in the desert, hours are worth more than gold. But there is a second strategy that can greatly affect the pharaoh. Ramses II is not just a general, he is a public image. His mere presence on the field makes the soldiers fight harder. If that image falls, even for an instant, the psychological blow can be brutal. That's why, instead of trying to kill the pharaoh, which would be almost impossible in the long run and would cause all of Egypt to go crazy with rage, the soldiers could try something smarter, and that would be to expose him. Literally show that the one they call the living god needs to hide. How is that achieved? By making the pharaoh forced into a retreat. The soldiers take advantage of their stealth to conduct a night raid on the royal camp. Not an attack to annihilate, but to break security. They tear down banners. They destroy command chariots. They interrupt the drums that coordinate signals. They set off controlled explosions near the royal tent. Then they retreat, leaving behind unknown symbols, marks on the ground, boot prints, deliberate trails that say, "We can enter whenever we want." What is sought is not a total military victory. It's a blow to his image. At dawn, the rumor would already be spreading through the troops. The pharaoh had to move in the night, and that phrase, in an army that believes its king is an untouchable god, hurts more than 100 arrows. Up to this point, it seems the modern soldiers can tip the scales. But there is another side that must be taken into account, and that is that the soldiers are making direct contact. Therefore, at some point, the Egyptians are going to capture one. Not because they win an assault, but because fatigue leads to mistakes. And the moment they capture a modern soldier alive, Ramses wins something the 21st century ones don't have: infinite time to interrogate, observe, and copy. They are going to study the weapon. They are going to try to use it. They are going to try to open the backpacks, turn on flashlights, understand vests, examine tourniquets. They might not manage to fire an M4 correctly, but they will understand one very dangerous thing: that these men are not gods. They bleed. They need water. They sleep. And if they bleed, then they can be hunted. That is the true twist of the story. At first, yes, the Egyptians fight with fear of the unknown, but in the end, they fight with a hunger for triumph, since they know the enemy are not untouchable men. So in this scenario, the great army of thousands of Egyptians fights with more strength and without fear. Then we reach the final question. What is actually possible to achieve here? Can the 50 modern soldiers conquer Egypt? No, that isn't realistic. Can they kill Ramses II and take the throne? That isn't realistic either. The moment the pharaoh falls, another prince or general would be declared the favorite of the gods and the system would continue. Can they wipe out the entire Egyptian army? Impossible. They don't have the logistics to sustain a long war, but there is something they could achieve, and that changes history. The modern soldiers could indeed force Ramses II to stop and fall back, even winning several battles. That is to say, they don't destroy the empire, but the soldiers with their modern military weaponry can undoubtedly launch a major offensive to the point of eliminating a large part of the Egyptian army. And above all, make it so the pharaoh is no longer seen as that symbol of overwhelming strength that yields to nothing. That, for that era, is huge. Making the pharaoh have to retreat in a battle would already be, politically, a devastating humiliation, and something that no army or nation had been able to achieve. Direct conclusion: the 50 modern soldiers can win short battles. They can sow fear. They can halt an invasion. They can touch the image of the pharaoh and prove that the living god is not untouchable, and that he is also in danger. What they cannot do is sustain control. They cannot rule Egypt. They cannot replace their ammunition. They cannot fight forever against the weather, thirst, and an enemy that reproduces faster than they can shoot. So the honest answer is this: they can bend Ramses II, but they cannot replace him. Now it's your turn. Is that a victory or not? What do you think would have happened? I'll read you in the comments.